My average client pays between $25,000 and $50,000. I don't just work with the 1% CEOs. I work with the 1% off the 1%.
Hey, I'm Yasir.
Billionaires, CEOs, viral creators. When they need to nail a speech, they call Yasir Khan. He's a TEDx speaker with 3 million followers and a world-class speech coach. If you want to know what it takes to become unforgettable with your words, you are in for a treat.
How do you build that confidence?
My definition of confidence is, to what degree do you believe in what you say? That will be confidence.
Champions are made on the practice ground, not during the competitions, because you're just turning up there and doing something that you've rehearsed 1,000 times.
Competence creates confidence.
The designation of the person that you're going to meet, that can cause insecurity.
There's a phenomenon, it's called authority anxiety, where you have anxiety only around people who you think have some authority over you. I have noticed that people at the top are the most insecure, even more so than the mid-level managers, the entry level, because the bar is so much higher.
And we are calling it iPhone.
One of the lessons that I've learned is the higher the quality of the people in your life, the higher the quality of your life in general.
What's been the secret to getting to 3 million followers, man? That is a lot of people.
When I started on TikTok and I started to get that initial traction, Chirag, I was making up to 25 videos a day because I did not realize you could schedule these videos too. Maybe you can space them out. In the first month, I got 20,000. In the first 3 months, I was at 100,000. 13 months in, I was at 1 million. You do enough volume and you realize what's working, and then you double down on those and you do it again and again and again. I haven't missed making a video in, I think, 3 years, every single day. And that sort of consistency is hard for people to do. If you look at my Instagram, my TikTok, the average amount of times I post per day is 3 times. And that's why I've been able to grow as fast as I have. And if you want to have that kind of growth, you need that kind of mindset. Skill set without mindset will leave you upset.
How do you become a better speaker and own the goddamn room?
One, if it's simple, it's easy to remember. Number two, if there's an emotion tied into it, not only in the story, but how I'm presenting the information. Number three, and this is the most important lesson I learned in communication, and it was in
Certified world-class speaking coach for CEOs. That's a unique gig. I want to understand how and why did you choose this line of work, and how did the journey start for you?
I did not choose this line of work at all. In fact, if you asked me 10 years ago what I would do for a living, this was the very last thing in all of the options that I had. So just to give you a quick rundown, I had crippling insecurity growing up. I had a lot of social anxiety. So the last thing I wanted is to be in front of people. Now, it just so happens that my parents noticed and said, hey, let's send this kid to Canada. Hopefully he'll open up and he'll make some friends. So when I got here, I still didn't make any friends. I still didn't have any social skills. So I just Googled how to make friends. And the first thing that popped up was something called a Toastmasters Club. Now, I'm sure you've heard of Toastmasters before. I hadn't at the time. I thought it was one of two things. I thought either it was a place where people sit in a circle and make a toast, or a place to get a good grilled cheese sandwich, one of those two. So I showed up there, and turns out it's a public speaking club. I'm like, okay, this is not what I intended. I just wanted to come and make some friends. But before I could leave, a woman saw me. And then she said, hey, we've got a new member. Come and introduce yourself in front of 35 people you've never met before in a new country. So obviously I was nervous. And if you were there in the room with me, you would have seen me shaking and sweating and intimidated. And I go up on stage. And to this day, I have no idea what I said. But then I sat back down in my seat and I'm beating myself up. I'm saying things like, this is why you don't leave the house. This is why you should just stay home, play video games. But then the woman, her name was Karen Knight. She looked directly at me and she said, Yasir, you're in a new country. You don't know anyone here. You've just taken the first step. Congratulations. And I thought, is this a Canadian thing? Are all these people this nice? Did she listen to what I said? Because that was a terrible speech. But then she came to me afterward and she said, Yasir, are you coming back to the meeting? I said, what do we say when we don't want to commit? Well, I'll think about it. I'll check my schedule, ask my grandma, check my horoscope, and I'll let you know. And she obviously had been in that situation before. She had heard that before. So she said, Yasir, if you just come back next week and you take that one small step, I think you can make some progress and change your life. So I'm just asking you to take one small step. So I came back the next week, the following week, for the next 4 weeks. Eventually, in the first month, I won my first public speaking contest. In the first 6 months, I had done 12 workshops on campus. In the first year and a half, I had done 4 speaking engagements. 10 years later, I'm a TEDx speaker. I'm coaching some of the biggest CEOs in the world with 3 million followers around the world. So all of this happened by complete accident. And I don't want to pretend like I went in there with a plan, because I did not.
From that kid who could barely talk and probably had a mini heart attack when he was called upon to the stage, to within 1 month, something changed. And I think
Yeah.
that's where you identified that this is something that is very much up your alley, and you got a taste of something which probably sparked something inside you. Talk to me more about it, that what got you hooked onto it.
Yeah. And by the way, I love the way you're asking questions. I get to answer with a story, so I love the setup. Malcolm Gladwell had a book called Tipping Point, where you reach a certain point after which things start to change. For me, to be perfectly honest, Chirag, I was never good at anything. I was always a shy kid who would never talk. I would not get good grades in class. I didn't really have anything that I could show to my parents that I'm worth the investment you're making in my education. So when I went to Toastmasters and I made some initial progress in those first few weeks, it was the first time in my life I got validation that I'm good at something. And when you're an insecure kid and you get some validation, you want to keep coming back and getting more and more validation. So I kept coming back, I kept making progress, but then it became a bit of an addiction where I used to come to Toastmasters to do speeches to get validation so I feel better about myself. And if I didn't come there, then I didn't feel better about myself. So it was almost like therapy for me. So I came very frequently. I did speeches very, very often. And because I was doing them very often, I made progress very significantly. And then my coach at the time, Karen Knight, she said, hey, we've got this competition coming up. You should sign up. And I said, Karen, I came here to make friends. I'm not trying to compete in this. But she said, no, just try it. And I won my first contest, which that moment to me was when things started to change. And the seed of belief was planted in my mind where, hey, if you can do this in just a month, what if you just continued doing it? So that's when I started going down that path full time.
And what course were you doing at the time when you were here? What were
Yeah.
you studying?
I was doing a master's in business administration, so an MBA. But
Right.
so here's the other thing. I also failed a course in my first semester. And
Love that.
And my parents were not happy about that because they had saved all of their money to send me there. They said, Yasir, this is your last shot. Please go there and make something happen. And my dad said, listen, I can only cover the first year and a half. You're on your own after that. So I had a lot of pressure on me to succeed. And failing the course the first semester was not the best start, I must admit. But when I finished that, I went to my counselor there and I said, listen, I hate this. I don't want to look at another spreadsheet again. I cannot do financial accounting and all this. I cannot do this. And she said, do you know we have a master's in education program here? And then I told my dad, like, hey, Dad, you know they have a master's of education program here? And my dad said, what the heck is a master's of education program? So eventually I still switched over just because I wanted something I could pass. It turns out it was a really good fit because I was doing coaching on the side, learning public speaking, and this program helped me elevate that skill as well. And that's where I ended the program too.
And while you're doing this program, was there a clear path defined in terms of what happens after you finish the program? Because, I mean, typically MBAs and people who are doing masters in business administration, I mean, the world is fairly defined. It's going to be marketing, sales, finance, HR, and this is where you're going to be.
So 2 thorns I had in my road. One is I went into the program because it was counseling focused and I was really interested in that facet. A year into that, they said, oh, by the way, this program will no longer get you certified. And everyone in class like, wait, why are you telling me this a year into the program? What am I supposed to do with this? And then when I graduated, I said, okay, I can find a job teaching or something like that. They said, oh, by the way, in order to teach, you also need a bachelor's in education. So you need to go back and do a 4-year degree again, and then you can teach. So I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do with this degree? So my first job, Chirag, for the first year was the receptionist at a hair salon with a master's degree in education. That's where I started. And I remember distinctly sitting behind the receptionist where And by the way, this was tailored towards women too. So a lot of women would come to get their hair and get their nails done. And I'm I'm sitting at the desk and I'm seeing people talk about their nails and their hair, and how do I even pretend to be interested in this? It's just very difficult. And that's when I started looking up, okay, maybe I should make some YouTube videos, maybe I should post some content. And that's where my social media presence started to take shape.
What year is this?
This was 2018 December.
2018 December. So
Correct.
give or take, it's 2019.
Right.
2019 to 2024, 5 years, 3 million followers. I'm going to dive into it.
Yeah.
And we definitely are going to take some inspiration and pointers from you. But
Yeah.
I think, a lot of students are going to resonate with your story because you've come here as an immigrant student and you've done different jobs to make sure that the bills are paid, you're looking after your expenses, etc. You've had to work on your skills, but I want to understand, for any student listening to you right now, they will be looking for jobs very soon. They will be presenting in their colleges on the different projects that they're doing. A quick tip over here: how do you become a better speaker without having a proper grip on the English language grammatically or pronunciation wise? Is that actually important? And you can still speak well and own the goddamn room.
I'm going to give you a three-part answer to this. One, I want listeners to know that I might not have had that same journey, even though I was an international student. My parents raised me to speak in English from a very early age. So I don't want them to be like, oh, I knew English before I got here. That's number one.
Right.
Number two, with speaking, many people are concerned with how they look and how they feel. How do I not get nervous? How do I not shake during an interview? And that's fine, but then it gets you to a baseline. Okay, now I can at least survive the interview, or I can survive. That should not be your focus, right? Number three, and this is the most important lesson I learned in communication, and it was in one of the workshops that I did. There was a public speaking workshop that I was doing, and a woman came to the workshop, sat right at the back, and she never said anything. And usually I get people to come up and speak about certain topics, and I give them advice. And she left after the workshop. Then the following week, I did the same workshop again, and she was there again in the back alone, didn't say anything. Now I'm thinking maybe she's shy, she needs a little bit of a push. So the next time she came, the third time, I said, okay, this time someone needed to push me. My first time, I'm going to push her. So I said, hey, you've been here before. How about you come on up here? I'm going to give you an easy question to answer, and you can just talk for as long as you want and get you started. And everyone started clapping, so there was a little bit of pressure for her. And I said, I'll give you an easy question. The question is, tell me about your last kiss, because my mind at the time was very mature, and that's the only question I could think of. So she slowly got up, and you can tell she was making her body small. She was shaking, and she slowly walked to the front of the room, and I was excited because I'd seen something like this happen enough times. So I sat back down in my seat. Everyone's paying attention to her, and she's looking directly at the ground. Now, if you were in the room, Chirag, you would have felt this rising anxiety in the room, because for the first 10 seconds, she didn't say anything. And then 20 seconds, 30 seconds, 40 seconds. Chirag, I'm sitting in my chair for an entire minute. She's on stage, just staring at the floor. Now, people start looking at me. Hey, you put her up there. Why are you embarrassing her in front of everyone? So I'm feeling guilty. So as I'm about to get up, she finally looks up at the audience and says, my last kiss would have been to my grandma before she passed. And she walked back and sat back in her chair. Chirag, it's been almost 7-8 years since that speech. And that one single sentence still sits in my heart. Did I judge her gestures? Did I judge what vocabulary she used, how confident she was? None of that. Why? Because in that moment, with one sentence, she made me feel something. And I feel like many international students who come here, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to be memorable. They don't know how to make someone feel something when they talk to them. So whether they're going into an interview and they're telling them about their experience, they're all logical, but then so is everyone else. The one missing component I find with them is how can I tell stories? How can I speak with feelings? And how can I make sure they remember me by the time I'm done?
It's so beautifully put, this entire example. I love it. And I want to go down this route, being
Sure.
memorable, storytelling, the importance of storytelling, and especially in today's world where we are in this digital world where a lot of people, at least, are
Yeah.
trying to make it big on social media, etc. But storytelling is a key part of anything that you're doing, even presentations.
Mm-hmm.
To just give you an example, when I came here, I used to work with the BMW Group Canada, and one assumed that it is one of the biggest brands in the world. So you
Mm-hmm.
only have the 1%. Top 1% people working there, which is true, but that applies to the skill set that you have in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
work that you're doing. We would have these meetings where I have been talking to somebody who sits right next to me, phenomenal at what he does.
Yes.
In that presentation, he would want to make me kill myself because he's giving a presentation and I know how good this person is. And a lot of us are like that. There would be like, and
Mm-hmm.
after, and then lack of clarity, and then you're just rushing through the
Mm-hmm.
presentations. I'm like, are you the same person who I sit with and he cannot keep his trap shut because he's
Mm-hmm.
funny, articulate, anything that you can imagine, great person to talk to, but that just becomes very difficult. And then what happens is these, Yasir, you would agree, and we're also going to talk about this when it comes to getting those promotions, getting being memorable.
Mm-hmm.
uh, People or directors or seniors being able to remember and say that, hey, this person is a leader. All
Mm-hmm.
this plays into that entire package.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, how do we make sure that we are memorable and we master the art of storytelling so that we are able to upskill and level up ourselves?
Yeah, I was speaking to a new client yesterday who he's a tech founder, a $3 billion company, and when he hears the word stories or storytelling, immediately, oh my God, can we just talk where we directly get to the point? I don't want to tell stories. I just want to tell people what I think and what we should do because many of these people are logical, right? And God
Hmm.
forbid the consulting clients that I have, the people from Deloitte and McKinsey, those people are the number one culprits of this, right? They, what they do is let me throw as many bullets and information at you, and I feel like I've done my job, but ultimately you won't remember a thing. And I'm sure, Chirag, you can speak to this. You sit through a 90-minute presentation, and afterwards I'll ask you, hey, Chirag, what did you learn from that presentation? What was that presentation about? Maybe an hour later, you've forgotten 95% of what you heard.
Easily.
The next day you probably forgot everything. So imagine there's a whole company update. There's 4 hours of presentation. You're wasting everyone's time. No one's going to remember it. So we need to change the definition of what storytelling is. Storytelling
Hmm.
to me is a more effective vehicle to get people to remember what you're talking about. If something is a more effective vehicle, why would we not want to employ it? Now, the issue is with many people, they think, oh, I have to say, when I was 16 years old, I did this, and then this. No, that doesn't have to be a story. A story can be an anecdote. It can be an example. It could be a minute long. And when we implement those, you become a lot more memorable. So, for example, if I said, I'm going to train you in public speaking. The first thing we're going to do a baseline process. After the baseline process, we're going to understand your speaking structure. We're going to understand your delivery mechanisms. I'm going to give you a hierarchy of levels that you're going to work towards to become a better public speaker. What the heck did I just say? What did I just say? You have no idea what I just said. I said words. You're not going to remember this in 5 minutes from now. But if I said, when we're working together and I'm coaching you in public speaking, the journey is going to be a lot like learning to ride a bike. The first time you get on, you're going to fall off a bunch of times. You might even feel a little embarrassed, but eventually you'll know where to put your foot. You'll know how to straddle on. Little by little, you'll start to make progress and you'll become a much better public speaker. That your journey as a public speaker is the same as learning a bicycle. How much easier is that to understand? Just because I've used a metaphor and an analogy. So that doesn't take a whole lot of time. Now, to your question about being memorable, one, if it's simple, it's easy to remember. Number two, if there's an emotion tied into it, not only in the story, but how I'm presenting the information. So if I said we have a client and they did this and they did that and this happened and this happened, Sure, but if I embellish that with my delivery, we had a client and they had their final $50,000 and they had to hire one more marketing team to fix their marketing problem. If they didn't, the entire company would go under. So when they came to us, there was a lot of pressure on us to deliver, and we weren't even sure if we could do it. Now, I'll stop here, but can you already feel some tension building up in that story?
Yeah.
A little bit of emotion there. When you learn to tell stories like that, and they could be a minute long, that's how you become memorable. Another thing I'll throw in there as a bonus is if you look at the world of journalism, they have what's called sound bites, where you'll have one sentence that people will say that immediately sparks in your brain. I'm sure with your podcast, you've had that happen where someone says something, oh, that was really good. That sounded really great. So an example of that could be JFK, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Tell me a single sentence from the rest of his speech. No one has any idea. So when you have these sound bites, these short messages that you pepper through your presentations, that's also what makes you memorable.
This is gold dust, Yasir. You work with a lot of CEOs, so I'm guessing that, obviously coaching them, training them, there are a lot of things that you're picking up. But the first thing I want to ask you is that typically CEOs are like the 1% of the entire corporate population, right? One would assume that because they're at that level, obviously they are the whole deal, they are the whole package. That said, before I started this podcast, that was my thinking. Now, once I've started this podcast, I understand that if you want to be that 1%, there's a lot of work that goes into it, which means I would need to hire a Yasir to be able to present better, to own the rooms. Because when you're a CEO and you're going to a meeting with different CEOs, then your egos are clashing as well. So how do I command that room? So there is that upmanship as well. I want to ask you that, give me like a couple of examples or the coolest example that you can think of where you've trained a CEO and that turned out to be an absolute smash hit. And you're like, this is why I love what I do.
I've got the perfect example for you. Before I go into that, I want to throw a bit of a caveat on what you just said. So you said some of these people who've got everything figured out. I have noticed that people at the top are the most insecure, even more so than the mid-level managers, the entry level, because the bar is so much higher. They're competing with top-tier talent. And I have the unique privilege. I don't just work with the 1% CEOs. I work with the 1% off the 1%, Chirag. These are CEOs of billion-dollar companies, founders of unicorns. These are extremely successful people. Because I've noticed a distinction between I was hired as a CEO to I built this company from the ground up. Those two CEOs are very different. So I've got very specific nuance there. Now, to answer your question about a story, I'm lucky enough I can share this story because 99% of my work is confidential. But I was working with a CEO. His name is Hussein Salim. He is the CEO of Ohana Development in Abu Dhabi. Now, to give you an idea, what he does is, the Burj Al Khalifa in Dubai. He builds iconic structures like that throughout UAE. Not the Burj Al Khalifa, but iconic structures that can be recognized. So he was building the Abu Dhabi version of that, like a structure that's going to be highly recognized. So we had worked before on his Forbes interview, and he said, Yasir, I've got a speech coming up. It's in about 6 days, and I need to get ready for this. So I said, okay, how many people are going to be there? He said, 400 people. I said, okay, that's not terrible. Then I'm trying to schedule a Zoom meeting with him, and because he's in Abu Dhabi and his schedule is all over the place, he just can't seem to make it on time. And then one day he sends me a voice message. He says, hey, sorry, I'm not in the office. I'm arranging this event. Can you just fly down to Abu Dhabi and help me with this? I said, you said your speech is in 4 days. Like, yeah, that's okay. I'll book you the flight and the hotel. Just let me know if you can make it. Now I'm looking at my girlfriend like, hey, I know we had plans for the weekend, but I might need to fly out to Abu Dhabi. She's like, what? Why? Like, because my client needs me. So I said, okay, I've got a friend there. Let me just postpone all of my events. Let me fly out there. So I fly out to the event and I meet him. And he says, yeah, meet me at this area in Abu Dhabi. And I'm walking around the venue and there's this giant palace around the venue. I'm thinking, okay, where the heck is this? And I asked the guard, hey, where is this thing? They're like, oh, the palace is the venue. Like, you're telling me the event isn't here? This giant, it looks like a monument of sorts, right? So I go in there. It looks like it's built for a king or something on the inside. And I see where the event is, and it's almost like a Victoria's Secret fashion show. They've got these giant screens. The hall is huge. And I meet Hussein. I'm like, Hussein, what is this event? What the heck are we preparing you for? He said, oh, by the way, I've been working on this giant building, which is going to be this iconic structure in Abu Dhabi. Every single person who's invested in the building is flying out to this event, and I have to unveil it for the first time. That's the event. We have one day. It took me 2 days to fly down here. You're telling me this now? So now I had to not only train him, not only help him deliver a speech that was super high pressure, but he had media coming in. He had script writers who were there because his team thought he needed his speech. We had the makeup department. So while they're putting the set together, I'm literally following him around like an executive assistant. And every moment I find where I have 2 minutes, I say, Hussein, tell me that story when you did X, Y, Z. And then he would tell me that, and then he would get interrupted. And then I say, okay, Hussein, before you go for lunch, say this, say that. So during a 12-hour period, I'm just finding these micro areas to get him to practice, because I know if he just steps on stage in front of 400 people, it's not going to work out well. And on top of that, his team hands him a script that a script writer wrote. And I said, we cannot do a script. How will you memorize a script last minute? You can't do it. So I'm having to fight with the team and training him, and it's complete chaos while they're putting the event together. But eventually we stayed there till like 11 o'clock the night before. I had him rehearse. On the day, even during his interviews, I was going up to him, hey, say it out loud, say the intro, say the intro, say the intro. And right as he stepped on stage, I don't usually get to see when my clients are performing, because usually they're on stage somewhere, it's a private meeting. But being there, surrounded by real estate billionaires, Saudi princes, royalty from the region, and seeing him go on stage and just absolutely crush it, Chirag, that was one of the best moments of my entire life. Second only to what happened right after his speech. When the event was winding down, I was going to fly out the next day. He called me on stage, and there are celebrities on stage, there's influencers on stage, and he says, Yasir, let's take a picture. I said, sure. And inside, I'm obviously very nervous because there's these high integrity people there. And after we take the photo, he says something to me I'll never forget. He looks me dead in the eye. He looks around and he says, Yasir helped me with my speech. Without him, this would not have happened. So I appreciate you flying down here and putting in the work yesterday. I know it was chaotic, but it was all worth it. Thank you so much. And I almost cried in that moment, because I've never had someone not only give me recognition, but give me public recognition at that level, and do it so candidly. So for me, that was one of the most fulfilling experiences as a coach I've ever had.
I love that story. That's so endearing and so inspiring, and it just shows the humility also that somebody like Hussein, who's such a huge leader, he has. So kudos to him, and what a proud moment for you. Tell me something. So I mean, this is a damn cool example, but what is the coolest part of what you do? What do you absolutely love about the work that you do?
If I'm being completely honest, I feel like when I work with my clients, I get the better part of the deal. Mm-hmm. It's because when I'm spending time with them and they're rehearsing their company presentation, they're rehearsing their pitch for the next 5 years of the company's direction, I'm listening to it, and partly I'm trying to analyze it, but the other half is, holy crap, that's amazing. I should be doing that with my business. And when you see the way they conduct their life, the way they talk to their team, the vision they have. So I'll give you another example. One of my clients, her name is Shannon Klingman. She is the founder of a brand called Lumi Deodorant. I feel like it's probably $1 billion brand by now. I'm not sure, but she is one of the most inspiring people I have ever met in my life. She invented this product. It's called a full body deodorant. Deodorant is often meant for the armpits, but she invented it for the entire body because she had some sweat issues, and there was no deodorant for that. And when she started, she refinanced her house. She put all of her money into product development. She went to Shark Tank. She had to convince people to believe in her. And she had no reason to believe that she could run a business, launch a product, because she was a trained medical professional. And she had zero evidence to support that this would be successful. But she told me, she said, Yasir, when I have a vision, I pretend it's already happened. And then it's a matter of just connecting the dots on the way back. I knew this brand was going to be successful. I went to Shark Tank. I didn't get it. I went to other investors. I didn't get it. I went to Walmart, all these different companies. I didn't get it. But I knew I would be successful. So she relentlessly chased after that pursuit. And now it's a ginormous brand in about 5 years. And what I learned from her is she has this ability to set a vision for herself and just not take no for an answer. She just you listen to her and she says, if anyone says anything that goes against what I have in my mind, I don't need to listen to what they say. And I noticed those patterns, not just in Shannon. I see the same thing in Hussein. I see it with other CEOs that I have. And for me, I come from a very insecure upbringing. I have a lot of challenges with that. My parents always told me, save money, get a stable job. When I'm working with these people, Chirag, I feel all of those limiting beliefs wear away. And over time, when you're around enough of these people, you know how they say you are the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with.
I was just going to get to that.
Yeah. And I'm lucky that I'm the average of the 500 CEOs that I've been coaching. It rubs off on you and your standard goes up. So one of the lessons that I've learned is the higher the quality of the people in your life, the higher the quality of your life in general. So that's the biggest perk that I've had working with these people.
How does one get to, I'm not saying CEOs, because obviously you have a
Yeah.
lot of experience now under your belt, but people who in general are starting new entrepreneurs or are looking to level up, how do they, and because I absolutely believe in what you've said, that you need to be surrounded with people who are smarter than you, who have a different perspective, who have seen more shit, who've accomplished things, because there is that wisdom and experience that they carry. How does one find these people? And one of the things would be that you start going to networking events.
Right.
But then there is this major imposter syndrome that kicks in with a lot of people. How am I going to start a conversation? What am I going to do in that networking event?
Yeah.
Tell me tips and tricks of how somebody would be able to do well at a networking event when they go in with the ambition of being able to make meaningful contacts.
There's two questions in what you just said. So one would be, how do you function in a networking event? And the other one is, how do you get started with imposter syndrome? Which one would you like me to answer?
Both.
Both of them. Okay, let me start with the first one. When I began, I had predominantly worked with students and some early professionals. That was my portfolio of people. And when I started making content on social media, someone booked a call on my calendar and it said VP of technology company. So he booked a call with me. And when I got on the call, he's a VP of a technology company. And he said, Yasir, I just want your help to be more confident in meetings when I'm speaking. And I'm thinking, oh my God, it's a VP. I've never worked with a VP. These people are all the way up here. And at the time, I wasn't doing this full time. I had a job. I was taking on clients on the side. But I was so intimidated, I didn't know what the heck they say in meetings. I didn't even know how to help him, right? So I said, okay, I'll help you. Let's get on a free call. And if you like what I have to offer, we'll go from there. So he put down a deposit. We got on the call. And what I do is, in my first call, I try to establish where are they now, so I know what to help them with. And the way I run this exercise is I throw some questions at them that they're not prepared for, and they just have to answer on the spot. So I'll ask a question like, where do you see the company going the next 5 years? If you had to change something about yourself, what would it be? And as I'm asking those questions, I had this feeling that he's making up the answers. It didn't sound like that's what he would actually say. So as he is saying those things to me, I don't really know how to help, and I don't want to challenge him. So I said, hey, I'm curious, is this actually how you would act if you were to go back in time? Is this what you would actually do for your vision and hire people? And he confidently said, oh, no, I'm just making it up. And then I'm thinking, I'm wondering, how come you're making it up and not just telling me you don't know the answer? He said, well, I as a leader, I can't tell people I don't know the answer. I have to tell them I know the answer. And again, I don't know how to help them. I'm thinking, is it worse that you're telling them you know and it's an incorrect answer? Or is it worse that you just tell them you don't know and you can point them to who does know? And then he just goes quiet, Chirag. And I'm thinking, Yasir, this is why you should just shut up, not work with VPs, just give him what he wants, stop asking all these questions. Thinks about it for a bit. And he said, Yasir, you know what? Let's continue this call later. I have other things going on. We'll continue this session later. And my self-esteem went from here. Actually, it went from here to completely submerged underwater. Like, Yasir, this is why you don't deserve to do this. All of the imposter syndrome comes back up. Then he messages me. He says, Yasir, after our conversation, I went to my therapist and we talked about it. And she reminded me that when I was a child, my parents were very strict and they did not allow me to to say I don't know. I had to have an answer. So I trained myself. Even when I don't know the answer, I have to have an answer. So now that I'm an adult and I'm coaching my team and they ask me questions, I always pretend to know the answers. But I'm seeing that they see me as a role model and they start to do the same thing. Where when they don't know the answer, they pretend like they know the answer. And this creates a lot of communication blocks in the company. So thank you for helping me with that. And then he came back and we continued working together. So after months of working with him, I finally had the courage to ask him, hey, when you and I worked together, I had no experience. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Why did you pay me? Why did you work with me? I didn't have any experience. And he said, to this day, I remember this. He said, Yasir, I didn't pay for your experience. I paid for your perspective. I didn't pay for your experience. I paid for your perspective. People pay for your perspective. I didn't want to know I could have found out from my colleagues about my public speaking. I wanted to know what you had to say about my public speaking. That's why I paid you. So when we're talking about networking events, oftentimes you have this imposter syndrome feeling where I don't know more than this person. I don't have more knowledge than this person. But what if you don't have more knowledge, but you have a different perspective? No matter how knowledgeable someone is, they can never see it from the outside. And that's where you come in. That's where you add perspective. So that will help you in your networking as well.
I love that. I need to find something else because everything that you're saying, I only have this one response. I love that. I need to expand my vocab there. No, genuinely, I think so much of value in what you shared. And this is where people struggle as well, because, of course, like you gave the example of having that imposter syndrome and then probably not being that open about sharing our own perspective because maybe there is this undertone of insecurity where you go with that, and it can also originate from what stage of life you're in at that point in time. You're somebody who's struggling to find a job or struggling or to find the next job that you want to be in, so it can be a combination of a lot of things. What I would want to ask you is that a lot of it has to do with confidence. I think pretty much everything, like you said, that the CEO that you were working with who wouldn't take no for an answer, and she just had this belief and confidence in herself that it is going to turn around. You at some point in time also showed that confidence to be able to have that conversation with a VP, because at some point in time it was going to happen. How do you build that? How do you build that confidence? Today's episode is brought to you by Kent Water Purification Systems. They are the pioneers in providing you with tasty, healthy, and chemical-free water. Not only are their water softeners great to reduce hair fall, but they have some amazing benefits towards your laundry and dishes. This is their offer for the current month. I recommend that you visit kentwater.ca and schedule a free water test to learn and understand more about the benefits of installing a water purification system. Thanks and enjoy the chat. How do you build that confidence?
If we were to define what confidence would be, this is my definition. My definition of confidence is you believe what you say. So if I say I will do X, I believe that I will do X. If I believe I can do X, I believe I can do it. I feel like there's a gap for most people where they're expected to do something or they make promises around doing something and they don't completely believe that they can do it. And that creates, okay, I'm going for this job interview. It's my first job ever as a marketing coordinator. I've just graduated. Sure, I'm confident about my preparation, but I have no idea what it's like to work in corporate. How can I possibly be confident? So there's a little bit of a gap there. So it's about, to what degree do you believe in what you say? That will be confidence. Now, the way to build it is, what do I have to supplement with to add more certainty to that? How can I get myself to believe that I can do X, Y, Z? So for me, before I ever worked with a CEO, and there were so many mindset blocks I had to go to, Chirag, just the VP level itself was intimidating enough. How can I convince myself that this will work? For me, it was constantly reminding myself by reading the testimonials of past clients. It was reminding myself that everyone has the same problem. Their job title is different. And a really weird, really strange way to deal with my imposter syndrome was I would just imagine the really successful people that I'm talking to at their worst. So I would imagine them flopping a presentation or not doing well in their relationships or being bankrupt at some point, and it would humanize them. where I'm just talking to another human being. I'm not talking to the senior partner at XYZ law firm. And that makes it a lot more intimidating. So that's the mindset component. And then what skill gap do you need to bridge that will give you more certainty in your ability? If you feel like I'm going in for this interview, I'm not confident enough, can you read up enough about the company to feel confident that you know how they operate? Can you read up enough about the job description to know about how they operate? Can you share enough stories about how you reflected the qualities that they're looking for? This just increases the overall level of certainty that you feel. And eventually, Chirag, you get to this point where you've done it enough times, you've talked about it enough times, you've read about it enough times where it's second nature to you. And you know you're confident when one day something hits you in the head and you say, oh, I haven't really been worried about that for a while. I haven't really thought about that for a while. I remember I was really trying to quit sugar for a long time and I just couldn't do it. And eventually I found that one thing that helped me quit sugar for a year and a half. And it was after a year and a half when someone said, hey, what birthday cake do you want? And I said, oh, I don't want a birthday cake. They said, why? Like, I don't eat sugar. I said, oh, how long's that been going on? Like, oh yeah, remember when I used to down all these cookies every day? I completely forgot about that. So with you and your confidence, as you're on the journey to build the skill set that you need, eventually you will reach that point where you have that tipping point. You realize, oh, I didn't know this was an insecurity of mine. I'm now confident. So how can you add repetition? How can you bridge those gaps with the skills that you need?
That's a great perspective. And, something that my father says, which I can put into perspective to this as well, is that champions are made on the practice ground, not during the competitions, because you're just turning up there and doing something that you've rehearsed 1,000 times. So whatever you say, nerves, or it can be anxiety, whatever that may be, it's not there because you've just done it so many times. And that's where you improve. That's how you get better. You've given me and told me how to overcome this, but I also want to break it down so that where people can relate to this.
Sure.
And I'm just trying to lay down the insecurities somebody may have. So you're talking to right now, things are different. But initially, when you started, number one, the designation of the person that you're going to meet, that can cause you insecurity because that person is more important than I am.
Yeah.
By virtue of the designation, the paycheck that they receive makes them more important, their existence more important than mine, because obviously they're probably getting more value.
Yeah.
It can be an appearance thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are extremely conscious about how they look and feel. We all may have certain few things. I don't know. And none of these are controllable, by the way. Right? So what else have you seen in people from all across different sort of designation standpoint and age group standpoint, that what are these insecurities that you've had to work on?
Much of the work that I was doing with VPs and managers, it was around credibility. When I speak in front of my team, I want people to take me seriously. And there wasn't public speaking anxiety. I want to make sure I impress this person. I want to make sure this person thinks I'm credible. I'm new to the team and I'm doing this presentation. But you will be surprised, Chirag, at if you heard a 15-year-old tell you about their insecurities and you heard a CEO tell you about their insecurities, and I told you, tell me which one's which, you would not be able to tell. They're the same. I've had CEOs in their 50s who've been living in the States for 35 years say, oh, I'm really insecure about my accent every time I speak. Or they'll tell me, hey, I'm a little on the heavier side, and whenever I'm on stage, I feel like people will make fun of me. And a lot of that stems from their childhood and their early life experience, where it sits in your brain. It has a big hold on you. And then you map that out to your future. So for me, I'll give you my example. When I was growing up, I was extremely skinny, very, very shy, and people would make fun of me like, hey, a gust of wind will blow you away. I also had really, really messed up teeth at the time and all kinds of body image issues around that. So I didn't realize up until a very long time, I wasn't really afraid of public speaking as much as I was afraid of just being seen by people, just being visible. And public speaking is the ultimate extreme of that. I'm in front of people where I have to perform where they can judge me. So for many people, they have instances like that where maybe they raised their hand in class once and they had the wrong answer and the teacher made fun of them. Or maybe they were overweight, underweight, some girl made fun of them, and anything like that. And because that trauma is not dealt with, it gets pushed down into your subconscious and spread out throughout the rest of your life. So I've had very obvious areas that I've had to work with my CEOs with. They'll say something like, "Oh, I have an accent. I can't be a good public speaker." So I'll just ask them a question. Okay, I completely understand where you're coming from. Do you think there's someone in the world who has an accent and still does not have confidence issues? Yeah, I guess they do. Okay. Do you think you could also be that? Yeah, probably. So I have to help them unwind many of those. So you'll be surprised how the job title has nothing to do with the work I do. In fact, if I train them based on their job title, "Oh, you're a CEO. I don't want to ask you about your childhood and what might have happened. Let's not touch that. Let's just do these speaking techniques." I'm doing them a disservice. So I try to talk to them as if I'm exactly where they are in their level, because then they will respect you. And Chirag, I'm sure you've seen this in corporate. When you have that one person who's a junior person who doesn't open their mouth, they don't really say anything, it's hard to see the value they add when they don't share their perspective. But when you're a lower level employee and you're vocal, like, "Hey, why do we do this? I'm curious. This is the process. How can we do that?" You start valuing them more. Oh, this person has input to add. So it comes back to perspective. So when I'm working with CEOs, all of the patterns that I see with them are still around insecurity, still around not being enough. And many of them, I've noticed, they have this weird chip on their shoulder where I have been wronged in the past, or someone fired me, or this guy stole my business idea, and I want to correct that. And they go so far into overcorrecting it that I want to be the best public speaker, the best CEO, the best this. I want everyone to know I'm like that. So they have an insecurity about not meeting their threshold, and usually their threshold is very high. So I have to step by step train them to unwind those beliefs and rebuild new systems that work with them long term, because I've noticed skill set without mindset will leave them upset. This is a saying my coach Craig Valentine says. Skill set without mindset will leave you upset. So a lot of times, at work in the skill set, where the mindset issue still persists, it doesn't stick long term.
That's my reel right there.
There you go.
That's very interesting. And a couple of things there. I think, when you spoke about the fact that how these people are driving motivation, the leaders, the CEOs, it just, I could relate to the last dance that you saw, that I saw. I don't know if you've seen this documentary on Netflix. It's about Michael Jordan and his last season, and it generally getting into his psyche as to how he would just make up things about a player who has never ever said anything about him, but he would be like, "I'm going to crush him tomorrow when I play against him." And others would go and talk to him, and the other player that he mentioned, that, "Hey, did you ever say anything to Mike?" He's like, "No, I've never spoken to him." But in Michael Jordan's mind, he's made up something because he has that drive, and he has to externalize this entire energy to be able to get motivated for that day. Interestingly, from your perspective, what I'm drawing a parallel to, and I love this. I don't know if you probably have definitely got this before. You're living proof of that movie Hitch, which had
Will Smith?
Will Smith and Kevin. I don't remember his name, but he's. I mean, it's a different way. So you're the parallel in the confidence slash, even for that matter, therapist and friend sort of a zone, wherein you're preparing people to be more confident, to find their extra. And in Hitch, he's a dating coach, wherein people are absolutely amazing. They're nice, but they don't have that confidence to be able to walk up to a woman and tell her exactly how they feel. And I think that you're doing a great service where you're able to help so many people, whether it is CEOs, and we need those CEOs to be better, because at the end of the day, they are the ones who are shaping futures of some big brands, upcoming brands, and those are adding back to the economy. They're creating more jobs.
Yeah, let me add two pieces of information there. One is, it's interesting you mentioned Hitch, because my initial motivator to improve my confidence was also dating, because as you can imagine, with lots of insecurities, I did not get a lot of luck in that department. So I was not getting any approval from women. I didn't have a lot of friends, had nothing I was good at. So when you talk about Michael Jordan, I feel like pain and insecurity is a much stronger motivator, at least it is for me, than just getting something. So if you're truly in pain, you will want to fix that. And if I didn't have that insecurity, I don't think I would have ever gotten there. Number two, you mentioned that I'm working with CEOs. And listen, my average client pays between 25,000 and 50,000. And I don't want people to think, oh, this guy is just helping rich people. And that's not a cause that I want to get behind. The reason I work with those people is because then I don't have to charge everyone else. If I go to a student and say, hey, pay me $5,000, $1,000, like I don't need their money. So I work with those level of people so I can learn the craft as soon as possible, and then I can make all the free videos. I can offer something dirt cheap that anyone in Kenya or in India in their mom's basement as they're growing up who have passion in their life, they can benefit from it. So this is not, I don't want to look like I'm doing God's work by just working with CEOs, but there's a larger plan in place. I want to get as much experience working with those people as possible so then I can help people who were where I was when I was starting off. And that's the ultimate mission that I have.
Even more respect for you, Yasir, for sharing this, because I definitely was not looking at from that lens, but I understand that people can have a different perspective towards it. But since you've added that layer of information as to what's the added cause to it and how you're serving the community, it just makes me like and support your mission even more. And one thing that I wanted to ask you was that since you spoke about making these videos, so going back to the journey, you started with YouTube putting up these videos wherein you, and I see a lot of series right now as well that you're doing where you pick up these videos where you highlight a great speech or some places where people have made mistakes, etc. Interesting anecdotes there. So how did this entire journey start? What's been the secret to getting to 3 million followers, man? That is a lot of people.
Most people don't know this about me, but I enjoy talking about business and content much more than I enjoy talking about communication. And the reason for that is, how do I say this without sounding crude? I'm really good at what I do. So I know everything inside about communication. Of course, there's things to learn, but it's the same thing over and over again. With business and sales and content, I don't get to talk about it enough. So when someone asks me about those, I'm just ready to unload on them. So just get ready for all the things that I'll put on you. I got started with YouTube because someone had reached out to me. I was the public speaking guy in campus, and I was very visible. So someone said, hey, can you talk more about the university and what it's like? So I would individually be messaging those people. This is my experience. This is how to get a part-time job. And then eventually I started getting so many of those. I said, okay, let me just make a video talking about my university. And I made that first video and I realized no one else had reviewed my university before. And I got 10,000 views in the first 2 months. And to the point where in orientation, they would literally show my video in a giant banner on campus. And I became that channel where I was just teaching people to come in and how to succeed in Canada. And eventually, after I graduated, I no longer wanted to make that content. So I started making content on how to get a job, how to succeed, because my first job after being a receptionist was as a recruiter. So I got to see the inside of what the resumes look like. And many of them didn't look very pretty, especially from students. I was like, okay, can we ditch this flowery background design and go with something? So I was making content around that. And eventually I decided I enjoy helping people with interviews the most, and that's because I had this background in communication training. One day I'll eventually have to make the switch. So in, was it 2022, I believe? I very reluctantly, I had all these videos from YouTube where my girlfriend said, hey, why don't you just put some of these on TikTok and see what happens? And I said, TikTok? This dance app? Who the heck is going to watch my videos from there? It might have been 2021, actually. So I put on 8 videos on TikTok, and then I just forgot about it. I never checked it. It was not a concern of mine. I checked it a week later. My girlfriend said, hey, did you see your followers? I said, what do you mean? And I checked. I had 8,000 followers. I, this is interesting. And then I started paying more attention to it, and I made more and more videos. In the first month, I got 20,000. In the first 3 months, I was at 100,000. I feel like 13 months in, I was at 1 million. So it did not take me very long. Then I had that same issue with Instagram. I don't want to use Instagram. The app is dying. Meta stock is plummeting. Who cares? TikTok is a new thing. And in 2023, last year, actually, funny enough, in May of last year, I made my Instagram account. What I did was many people in India was it India? Yeah, India. The TikTok app was banned. And
Yes.
they said, hey, we can't watch any of your content. Can you also put it on Instagram? So I said, sure. I put it on Instagram. Same exact thing. Let me just take what's on TikTok and put it there and forget about it. First 30 days, 10,000 followers. I said, oh my God, are we going to do this again? And then it took me 2 months to get to 100,000 and 8 months to get to 1 million. And about just today, I hit 2 million actually. So it's been about a year and a half and we hit 2 million. So at that point, people said, you probably have a knack for making content, right? I never really thought about that. Maybe I do. I haven't really heard a lot of people make this kind of progress. So it didn't take me very long to get to where I'm at now, but I'm happy to break that down if you want.
Yes, please. I knew about your Instagram because I saw sometime last year or early this year that you'd hit 1 million. And then recently when I saw, I was like, oh my God, you have jumped double that amount in just just a couple of months. So the growth has been phenomenal. Now, and especially the fun part here is that you've just put out videos and forgotten about them and you've come back and seen, but there is definitely some method to the madness. Now there are content creators out there who are looking to grow on social media. If that's something, if they were to reach out to you for advice, Yasir, that what do we do, how do we make sure that we grow? Because I've seen those videos. I have a little bit of an understanding, but I want you to explain in your words that what would you advise to an upcoming content creator how to grow on social media?
Let's get a little bit more nuanced. Is this with the intention of just becoming famous or to run a business? What's the intention behind it?
I think eventually everybody starts with trying to acquire and build a community or at least be famous, and then they want to see that, hey, can it go anywhere? Majority.
Okay, so if I wanted to make a lot more money, I would go back in time and restart my channel and only make videos for CEOs. That's what I would do. I was at this mastermind. You've heard of Alex Hormozi before?
Yes.
So he had a workshop in Vegas and I went there. And there were people with 4,000 followers, 5,000 followers making $2 million a year. And I'm looking at my account like, I have 1.8 million and I don't make as much money as you do. What the heck are you doing? And he had a chiropractic business. I forget what his name was, but he said, if I went viral, my business would crash. I said, what are you talking about? My entire strategy is to go to viral. He's like, no, I make content to help chiropractors grow in their business. Every single view, every single follower on my channel is a chiropractor. Why would anyone else watch my videos? I've been told to make those satisfying videos of how to crack your back and get millions of views. But if I had that happen, my business would plummet because every single time someone follows me, I immediately send them a personal message. Hey, thank you so much for following me. I noticed you have a chiropractic practice. What's going on? And I establish conversation with them. And out of 5 conversations, I sell one of them on my $5,000 to $10,000 program. Now, if I had millions of people, I can have those conversations with them. How will I sort through who's a chiropractor and who's not? That was such a huge shift in my mind where I thought you need to get famous to be successful. No, you can have very few followers, have an expensive service, and be extremely wealthy. And I feel like many people don't know how to do that, including myself. I didn't know that. So if I were to go back, that's the first thing I would have done. Now, there are some benefits of being more famous. When people see your follower count, instantly your credibility goes sky high. Like, oh, he has 2 million followers. I've had people, again, I keep thinking, is this person confidential or not? I've had people who, they've gone to companies that have been in the industry for 30, 40 years doing media training and they're best in class, but they've seen my videos. They know what I'm like. They know what it's like to talk to me. They said, Yasir, I know these people do better. I've seen your stuff. I want to work with you. I'm willing to wait till you have slots available just so I can work with you. That's something a good social media following will do for you. Now, let's break it down into how to grow it, regardless of which way you want to take it. The only difference would be the kind of content you make. So let's say you just want to go niche with CEOs or whoever your ideal client is. You would keep the volume the same, but you would make content just for that avatar. So for example, Chirag, if you are a dentist with 2 branches, or at least 2 branches. So I would say if you're a dentist with at least 2 locations, this is what you can do to open your 3rd. Now the audience is limited to like this many people out of all of humanity. It's irrelevant to everyone, but everyone who watches it is highly relevant. So what you would do is you would make content just for them. But now let's assume you want to make content for as many people as possible. Maybe you're in fitness, maybe you're talking about career coaching, applies to a lot more people. Here's what I did. I don't want to tell you what to do because I don't know your life. When I started on TikTok and I started to get that initial traction, Chirag, I was making up to 25 videos a day in one single day. So what I would do is I would sit in front of my camera, I would hit record, I would go through all the most common questions my client could ask. How do I open a speech? How do I close a speech? And I would say, okay, how do I open my speech? Here's how you would open your speech. You say X, Y, Z, blah, 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 blah. How do I not open my speech? Here's the worst way to open your speech. Don't do this, X, Y. And I would just say that for about an hour and a half or however long it would take me. And then I would upload them literally that day, all 25 videos, because I did not realize you could schedule these videos too. That it took me about 6 months to realize maybe you don't have to upload all of them right now. Maybe you can space them out, right? But at least on TikTok, that's what allowed me to grow really fast because I got repetition very, very quickly. And I got to know what kind of content pieces work really well. So one of the ones that I was doing was, is this person a good public speaker? And now you'll see a lot of public speakers in the space have taken this format. I'll have a client who'll say, hey, this is my boss. This is his speech. Can you make a video about him on your TikTok? And I'll make it. And then 3 months later, some other public speaking coach finds that exact same speech. I'm like, I know you saw that it performed well on mine and now you're making content. But the reason I'm doing it is because my clients asked me to do it. So you do enough volume and you realize what's working and then you double down on those and you do it again and again and again. I haven't missed making a video in I think 3 years. Every single day. And that sort of consistency is hard for people to do. If you look at my Instagram, my TikTok, the average amount of times I post per day is 3 times. And that's why I've been able to grow as fast as I have. And if you want to have that kind of growth, you need that kind of mindset and that kind of effort too.
I definitely want to dive into your productivity schedule routine hack because I mean, you're churning out 3 videos a day. You are taking these client meetings. At times you have to be flown down to a different country altogether, but still you're managing everything. So and you're obviously you're spending so much time with high performers, peak performers. We'd love to, I think me and the audience would love to hear from you on what are your productivity hacks. How do we get more done in a day?
Okay, this is going to be an interesting answer. I am the worst person to get advice on productivity because I did not realize up until 6 months ago that I had ADHD. I had no idea. I didn't even believe what ADHD was. I don't believe in these labels, whatever. I met someone at a mastermind who, as I'm telling them about my business, he's just looking at me, like staring into my eyes longer than normally people would. And I'm getting a little creeped out. And I just asked him, hey, I'm just curious, why does it feel like you're analyzing me? He said, I run an ADHD clinic, and based on the way you speak, you sound like someone who's ADHD. And I said, I don't really care what that is. Like, what difference does it make? He's like, no, it can make a huge difference to your life and how you run your day. And then he started asking me questions. He said, I'm curious, do you lose things often? I said, yeah, I lose things like 14 times a day. Like, okay, are you very impulsive? Like if you get an idea, you have to do it right now? I said, that's exactly how I make content. If I get an idea, I can't just write it down. I'll be in the middle of a conversation with my girlfriend and say, hey, can you stop talking for a quick second? I'll be right back. I'll go film a video, come back, continue the conversation. Like that's how impulsive I am. And he just started listing these things down. And I'm thinking, is this a thing? So he said, why don't you get tested at my clinic? Just take the initial evaluation and based on that, we'll go from there. So I got tested. They did some tests where they have a certain amount of questions they ask, and based on the results, they tell you. I had about a 93% ADHD likelihood. And so most likely you have ADHD, and the benefit of that for you is you're very impulsive. So the time between you get an idea and when you execute is extremely small, which is why I was making the 25 videos, which is why I don't wait time to do things in my business. The downside of that is because you do things so impulsively, you're constantly doing things that don't need to be done. So sometimes I would wake up, Chirag, I would be making a video, answering an email, doing a client call, editing my YouTube video, and by the time it's 8 p.m., I don't know what the heck I've done all day. And up until 6 months ago, Chirag, that's exactly how I've run my life. So if you ask me, what's your productivity routine? It would be Here's my productivity routine. Wake up at 12 p.m., work until 2 in the morning, be on your phone about 7 hours a day, edit videos, and be glued to your screen. I don't think that sounds like the most appealing productivity routine, yet that's what got me to where I am now. A shift was when I finally did decide to get on medication. Now, I'm not condoning them. I just decided to do it for my personal reasons. I saw a huge difference in systematizing and organizing my thoughts now. Where now, if I get a thought, I can slow down a little bit. I can say, okay, Mondays are for this, Tuesdays are for content, Wednesdays are for my coaching, and I feel like it's only now that I've started to become more productive. So what I'll do is now I'll have certain theme days. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays are usually client calls just because usually my CEOs are available during that time. Tuesdays, I'll do my content. And Thursdays, I'll do some sort of video editing or content scripting. Saturdays, Sundays, I have a membership that I run as well. So I'll do some membership work. And Sundays, I try to take off. But to be honest with you, I don't think I've had a day off in 6 years.
I think that's also depends on the season that you are in your life and
Yeah.
in your entrepreneurial journey, right? So
Correct.
a lot of ideas sort of die because of procrastination, which can be morphed in way of overthinking as well, wherein you're being too critical, or for that matter, looking for perfection when you're just starting. It's not about that. It's just about churning out things. And like you said, uh, the time between the idea and execution is so short that you've
Mm-hmm.
by the end of it put out so many things. You also have proof of concept that what's
Mm-hmm.
working and what isn't.
Mm-hmm.
And as Alex says, the more you do, the better you get. So that's really what I think the implementation has been, and that's where the learning has been. And now with the 3 million followers across all the different platforms,
Mm-hmm.
you can take time to make sure that, okay, fine, now how do I do this? Because that's a different journey altogether. So I get that,
Yeah.
and that's really valuable advice, Yasir. You got to tell me about your experience with Alex Hormozi, man. The most popular guy on the internet,
Mm.
great speaker. You got to tell me what was the entire experience, and how was he in real life vis-a-vis what we see on the YouTube
Yeah.
videos?
This is an interesting thing about me. When I meet famous people, it doesn't. I'm not like a fan when I meet them. A lot of people at the workshop are like, oh my God, Alex Hormozi, I want him to sign my book, and I want to make sure he knows how much he helped me in my life. I don't care about that. When I meet them, it's another guy. I don't know why that is, but maybe it's because of the amount of CEOs that I work with.
Absolutely.
Everyone's just kind of the same. But he is exactly as he comes across in his videos. Very direct, very straightforward. The one thing I will say, his calves are like that big. There was this one day where he was wearing pants, and everyone, the only takeaway I had from his talk was, did you notice he was wearing pants on stage? And I was right at the front too. And the second day he was wearing shorts, and I was like, holy crap, what are those boulders in the back of his legs? Just gigantic. But and just so you know, I'm not affiliated with Alex. I don't want anyone to listen to this and
Sure.
say, oh, Yasir flew out there and was working with Alex. I got to ask him and Leila some questions. They very candidly responded to my questions about my business. Leila was an absolute sweetheart. She comes across very caring in her videos. In person, she's 10 times that, where she will go the extra mile. And my question to her was, I work with people like you, CEOs and high performers. How do I reach more people like that? Because I can't just cold email them. And she said, find a way to give them value ahead of time and then make a proposition. So that was very valuable to me. I came back, and instead of coaching them, I would just watch their previous talk. Let's say they're doing a 2024 keynote. I'll look at their 2023 keynote. I'll do a half an hour long analysis before they've even heard of me. I'll send them an email and say, hey, I know you've got this keynote coming up. Here's the one you did last year. I'm a public speaking coach. I help people. Here's my analysis. Take it or leave it. Hope this was helpful. And 9 times out of 10, no one will ever see it. Their assistant filters it out, whatever. One time someone will say, wow, you had no idea who I was. You went out there. You created this entire thing. Why don't we get on a call and let's see how you can help my team? And that value, the advice that Leila gave me was instantly valuable to me. What I really enjoyed about that workshop was, yes, the content was great. You're there to just run your idea by them and get affirmation. Hey, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What would you do? And if they also say yes, you walk out saying, oh, thank God, I was going to do that too. Now they say it's a good idea. But really, it's the other people that you meet in that area. I got out of the cab, Chirag. The first four people I saw said, "Hey, aren't you that public speaking coach?" The moment I got out of the cab, and I was shocked because if you look at my Instagram stats, 65% of my audience is Pakistan, India, Kenya. I didn't know how much of my content was going around the US. I had about 9 people recognize me at that event, and I said, "Oh, I did not know this." And a lot of them had great feedback to give me about my content, what was resonating. So overall, just being in a room full of people who were making millions of dollars, getting some guidance from Alex and Leila and their team, it was a great experience.
Let's imagine a pie which makes it 100%.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be a better speaker.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that I can do immediately? Break that 100% pie down for me on the elements that I need to work on to be a better speaker.
Number one, know what you're talking about by a landslide. You can have all the confidence in the world talking about something you have no idea about, and people will just smell that it doesn't synchronize. It can, like a used car salesman. You can just tell there's a vibe about them. Number two, be able to articulate your thoughts in the simplest possible manner in the fewest possible words. I'll ask someone, almost always my first question with my clients is, okay, we've done the entire rehearsal. If you were to summarize this entire presentation in one sentence, what would it be? What should I take away from it? Almost always their answer is at least 5 to 10 sentences. I said, okay, so if it's not clear to you, it's not clear to them. Summarize it in one sentence. And then only find the details in the words that support that one message. So know what you're talking about, use as few words as possible, be as clear as possible. I'll share a quick analogy with you here. I was once invited to do a speech at Toastmasters long after I wasn't doing Toastmasters anymore, but they wanted me to come and do a club presentation. And I felt really good about my speech. I had this speech about my dad and how he was my tennis coach. And because he was my coach and my dad, there was a bit of a turmoil there. And I felt amazing. And after my speech, everyone, wow, this is an incredible Yasir. You're such an amazing public speaker. And there's one individual who is just standing to the side, not saying anything. And I felt, okay, why don't you come on up and ask me your question too, older gentleman. And he came to me and he said, Yasir, what was the message of your speech? I said, well, it was my relationship with my dad and how he was my tennis coach and how we had a little bit. No. What was the message of your speech? Yeah, it was about my relationship. No. What was the message of your speech? I'm thinking, is this guy deaf? How many times do I have to tell you? I'm telling him the message. And he said, okay, let me ask you this, Yasir. If you were invited to dinner, would you go empty-handed or would you take a gift with you? Is this guy talking to me in riddles all of a sudden? What is happening? Yes, I would take a gift. Okay, what would you take? I take a box of chocolates. What kind of chocolates would you take? Ferrero Rocher, I don't know, some fancy chocolates. Okay, would you just take the chocolate box like that? No, I would wrap it up in gift wrap. Okay, gift wrap the chocolates. You go there. What do you do with the gift when you see them? Well, I give them the gift. Okay, they get the gift. What do? Well, they open the gift wrap and they eat the chocolates. What do they do with the gift wrap? They toss in the trash. That's exactly what I did with your speech. You gave me the gift wrap. You did not give me the gift. You gave me the story. You did not give me the message. I'm like, thank you very much for tearing apart my self-esteem there. Then he walked me to this whiteboard and he just wrote the word 10 and made a circle around it and said, unless you know your message in 10 words or less, you're not ready to put a presentation together. Start with a message and then only add the details that feed that message. By the end of your presentation, I should be able to ask your presenters what was the one single takeaway from this presentation, and they should be able to say that sentence out loud. And that's your soundbite. That's your I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King. That's your one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. No one remembers anything else. They just remember that one single sentence. So speak in fewer words, focus on the message, know what you're talking about. When you have all these three elements, passion and enthusiasm naturally follows. Because you can have the best words, you can speak in an articulate way, have the best pauses, great right hand gesture, great left hand gesture. All of the individual components of public speaking line up. But if you don't sound like a human being, you don't sound passionate, you use too many words, people will not relate to you and they won't remember you.
You know, somebody who in life, or some people who in life know exactly what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And not only do they know what they want to do, they're just so fucking amazing at it. Literally, that's the dream. And the way you are, You're that person who I know who knows exactly what he wants to do, is fucking good at what they do. You're living the dream, man.
I appreciate it. It's less glamorous on the inside that it comes across, but I do enjoy my work a lot.
This was so powerful. And for all the corporate folks out there listening to it, once the episode is out, this is how you avoid death by presentation.
Yeah, it's just if you could just be more memorable and you can just have what you say linger in people's mind a bit longer, the impact you create could be much more than you could think. Can I just leave you with one final example, if that's okay?
Please.
Right? And this is an example from my job as a recruiter. I was given a job to hire someone as a sales manager for a hospitality company, a really big hospitality company in Canada. They said, we have 5 referrals already. We're probably going to go with one of them, but we just want to make sure we look at external candidates too. So just find anyone who applied and just talk to them and whatever, schedule some interviews. So I talked to the 5 referrals. I said, okay, I'll book some of these in. I went to some resumes and I saw someone, the role required about 8 years of Canadian experience in hospitality and all these specific requirements. One of the resumes, let's just call this person Sam. He had a resume where he had experience in the industry, but he only had 3 years of experience. So that's 5 years less. And all of his experience was from Ireland. It wasn't from Canada. And his most recent job was also in Ireland. So it sounded like he just landed here. He just got started. So I figured, okay, I had to talk to people anyway. Let me just shortlist him and give him a call. I gave him a call, said, hey, thank you for applying, saw your resume. What got you to apply? What brings you to applying for this role? And then he said, Yasir, I grew up in Ireland as an orphan, and I worked with my uncle at a wedding venue. And I used to work there as a kid. And as I grew up, I loved the event industry in general. I loved how my uncle would manage. And over time, I became a manager there. I would work with clients. I really enjoyed it. As my career progressed, I started working for bigger and bigger venues. I started working for Dublin's biggest event venue there. And I absolutely loved my work, helping clients decide what kind of marriage to put on, what kind of event to put on, bringing their vision to life. It was amazing. Eventually, I started dating someone who was very environmentally conscious, and I became very environmentally conscious. I knew the next step that I wanted to take in my life was to work with a company that's also very environmentally conscious. So I did all of my research, and I found that this company in Canada is the only events company, the only hospitality company that's this focused in going green. So I knew I wanted to work there. So I applied for PR, did all the stuff, flew on over here, and Yasir, this is the only job that I've applied for. That's why I'm interested in the role. Now, I'm looking at the resume. He doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have the local Canadian experience. But Chirag, you tell me, if you listen to that story, would at least a part of you feel like, let me give him a shot. Let me just see what I can do. Right? So I said, listen, at the most, what I can do, I can tell the manager about you, but it's up to them. He said, hey, I'm not expecting any favors, whatever you'd like to do. So I shortlisted 3 people from the referral, and I shortlisted Sam, and I went back to the hiring manager. I said, I don't quite know what it is about him, but I feel like you should just talk to him. Just have an interview with him and see what he says. He's like, okay, on paper, it doesn't really seem like a fit, but if you say so. So we had the first round of interviews, and they come back. They say, yeah, we had great interviews. We want this person. And you know what? We'll bring Sam back in for a second interview too. Now, I still have a job to do. I still want to make sure they recruit. So I said, Sam, why do you want to bring in Sam? Sam doesn't have any experience. They said, no, something about him. I don't know what it was. I just want to make sure my manager also talks to him and what he says. So we go in for the second interview, come back, talk to them about the second interview. So how was it? Yeah, we're ready. The final interview, we want this person and we want Sam. How is this guy getting all the way to what's happening? You told me he won 8 years of experience. They have to have Canadian experience. Eventually, they had the final round of interviews, and the hiring manager comes back to me and he said, Yasir, I don't know what to tell you. We got to hire Sam. I'm happy for you, but why? Why do you want to hire Sam? Tell me. He said, all of the other people had the experience. When I spoke to them, they can do the job. There's no question about it. But when I speak to Sam, I can feel his passion for the job. I can feel that this means a lot to him, and I know he's going to go the extra mile to make sure our clients are happy. I'd rather get Sam to work with me. So of course I called Sam and I told him. He was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. I was manifesting this for the rest of my life." But I learned an important lesson in that moment, that even when you are less experienced, even when you have the odds stacked against your favor, Chirag, we talked about this earlier, if you can get them to feel something, that's how you can make sure they remember you. And I've seen this happen time and time again in job interviews, in presentations, in sales deck presentations, in networking events, where you make someone feel something, they will remember you. And that gives you a very big competitive edge.
Mic drop. That's perfect. And such a strong example for somebody who is struggling right now, and you know how ruthless Canada is, and how many people, students, new immigrants, even working professionals who've been here for the longest time are struggling to find that next career move. It just gives so much more perspective to everyone that you gotta keep believing, you gotta have that faith.
Gotta keep believing. Is that a song or something?
I don't know, but I mean, one of the signs which is missing in my background is the Ted Lasso believe sign.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that show or not,
Yeah.
but that just changed my perspective towards things. The goal of the podcast and the conversations that I'm having is to be able to cull out information that can help somebody become better at what they're lacking, or at least get some clarity around different things. So this conversation which we had, I wanted to learn that how is it that people can be better speakers. Second, definitely learn from your social media exploits, that how can we grow on social media.
Okay.
You spend a lot of time training CEOs, etc. So know what habits and what the thinking process of high performers are, what it is like to be with them, to understand their psyche as well. And eventually, how can we have more of a presence? How can we speak better so that if I'm not getting noticed in my organization, right? It happened with me that I can speak the language, but I can't speak it as well as Canadians. I wouldn't know the jargons that they would throw around, right? I worked with BMW in India as well. And here I worked with BMW in Canada. So I knew what I was doing in terms of work. But suddenly I was like, I don't understand the jargons that they throw or the references that they throw. So at some level, I became quiet. And
I see.
you mentioned this, that you're not quiet, you don't get noticed, and that started happening. At some level, I became very dissatisfied, and I was like, this shit is not happening. This is not me. This is not the version of Chirag who landed here. Because believe you me, I landed here thinking I'm Cat's Whiskers, and then the entire thing changed. I lost confidence. Then I lost confidence in terms of being able to have that presence overall. And I do feel that I have a knack with people. I'm a good listener. My jokes, suddenly my references were very dated and typecast to a community. So I just had a very difficult time being able to break through that mindset that I had. That, Yasir, led to me being extremely frustrated and fell out of love with my job, which was my dream to be there. But it also gave me the opportunity to really dig deep and realize that I didn't want to be in a job. My dream growing up was hosting a sports show. Now I can't do that, but this is something which comes very close to it, wherein I can build a platform and help the younger version. So the 10-word message in that long story would be to help the younger version of Chirag, and anybody who can resonate with that Chirag would have similar problems. That's the context.
I'm glad you gave us an example of how something I said was memorable enough for you to remember and implement it right away. So I'm glad that was valuable for you. You talked about being quiet when you came to Canada. This is something I experienced, and I can't tell you how many people I know. Like, I used to coach many tech leaders from India. They would come from IIT, and then they would go into the US, and all of a sudden they're talking about hockey and all these things, and they have no idea how to fit in. There's a phenomenon that I learned about. I didn't know it was a thing. It's called authority anxiety, where you have anxiety only around people who you think have some authority over you. And this doesn't have to be a job title, but if you're a native speaker and I'm not, I have an accent and you don't, in some respect, I will feel like you have a higher social status than I do. And I'm more intimidated because I want to impress you and I want to fit in. So many times it's not I'll have people say, oh, I'm not a good public speaker. How do I speak better in front of my manager? And I'll say, you don't have any issues with public speaking. You're amazing. You're just insecure because you can't talk about the topics they talk about, or you have an accent and you feel like that's an issue, whereas they don't. And 9 times out of 10, I'll say, let's say you became the best public speaker in the world. Will that eliminate all of your insecurities that you feel right now? And they'll say, no. Well, then that's not the problem. The problem is how you feel about yourself internally. So authority anxiety is how do you bridge that gap between seeing your own self-worth? We talked about the job titles before. You just have to imagine every single person not having your perspective. And when they don't have your perspective, immediately you have the upper hand. Sometimes just having that beginner mindset where they're so in the weeds of something, they can't even see things from the outside. Like when I was working with this CEO of a law firm, and he had this giant presentation prepared, and he said, yeah, we're just about done. I just want to get your last minute tips on it. And I had to look at it, and I said, this is awful. Like, I don't know what other word to use. It's terrible. You spent 40 minutes on one slide. How will I possibly remember any of this? And because everyone in their circle said it was amazing, everyone in their team said it was amazing, they needed that outside perspective. So if you can just train yourself, hey, I'm not here to connect with them based on the topic they're discussing. Chirag, I learned, it took me too long to learn that sometimes I'm just not in the right room. Sometimes these are just not people I want to be best friends with. Sometimes I don't have to earn their trust. I'll give you an extreme example. I once saw an ad for a meditation class. And I wanted to know more about meditation and breath work. So I said, I'll show up. So I showed up to the meditation class, and I'm looking around, and everyone's a woman, and they all have a bit of a bump on their stomach, right? Okay, some of them are pregnant, whatever. And then the entire class finishes. I'm thinking, why am I the only guy in this class? I went back after the class, and I read the poster and said, Introduction to Meditation for New Moms. Now, should I force myself to be interested in what they're interested in? Obviously not. Right? It's just not my room. So similarly, I've had many Canadians who'll talk about hockey, they'll talk about baseball. And Chirag, I'm sure for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, at some point you might have thought about, man, I wish I had something to say here. I wish I knew enough about baseball.
100%.
Right?
Absolutely.
You want to fit in. But at a certain point, I had this shift in my mind where I said, this is boring. I don't want to be here. So the dynamic changes. I am no longer trying to fit in with them. I'm like, I don't care. I'd rather be home. Now I can be selective of where I want to fit in. And there's many people that you can talk to at work and then be selective of whether you want to talk to them after work as well. That simple perspective shift around they're normal people. You can add something to their life. And also, you don't have to be part of the conversation. That goes a long way with authority anxiety. You talked about building confidence at the end for the younger generation. Here's a quote that I'll give you from a coach who had a really big impact on me. I was under the impression that if I get all the skills in public speaking and communication, I can now bridge this gap in the skill set lack that I have and therefore be a confident speaker. You've heard competence creates confidence, right? So if I become competent at public speaking, I will therefore become confident. However, I realized 5 years into being a good public speaker, I didn't feel any more confident. I felt the exact same, except I just had much fewer filler words. I used my body a whole lot more. So what's the missing ingredient? So when I asked my coach, I said, hey, what's going on? Why do I not feel confident? I get validation from people. And he said something I remember to this day. He said, a lion doesn't need to sharpen his claws to know he's the king of the jungle. He just knows he is. So if a lion had to wake up every single day and get validation from the lamb, from the sheep that he is the shit, he was not very confident because he's relying on external validation. So for you, what do you need to do to convince yourself you're the king of the jungle? You can decide that right now and conduct yourself that way and walk around without any skill set. You can have all the filler words in the world. Just decide, hey, today I'm confident, this is who I am. And I don't know what it was about when he said that. It just changed something in my head where I just decided in that moment, I'm just a confident person now. I will be delusionally confident. A strange example, again, I'm a big tennis guy, and I don't know if you're a big tennis person, but Novak Djokovic, he is arguably the best tennis player ever. When he was coming up, Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal, the two at the top, and by a mile.
By a mile.
And he was rank 200 or whatever at the time. And he was telling people, one day I will beat both of them. I'll make it look easy and I'll be the best in the world. Now, at that time, he had no evidence to believe this. He had no reason to believe this. He hadn't beaten them, but it was delusional level of confidence. He just created a character and he just became that person. And we talked about Shannon earlier on. We talked about Hussein earlier on. I've seen the same exact characteristics. You have to be delusionally confident in yourself and your abilities until you yourself believe it. And that's been it's been very useful for me. And I feel like if there's students listening to them, what do you have to lose about telling yourself you're more confident? You might as well. Because 99% of the thoughts in your head are not true anyway. So you might as well think about things that are more positive than negative.
Absolutely. So much agree with you. And, this is something that I've been also trying to explore and replicate in my own life. Because, of course, when you make pivots later, which you are not able to justify to people around you. So I was like, I got frustrated to an extent, and just giving you the backstory that, I eventually didn't like the job that I was doing, but it paid my bills. So I couldn't quit. That made me feel sick.
Golden handcuffs.
Exactly. And then because I kept working, it made me feel even more sick. So I was like, okay, I reached a tipping point. I was like, this is not 100% version of Chirag. Not happening, not at all. They're not going to see it. I'm not getting what I want out of this organization because I don't have that environment. And I now don't have the willingness to fight back either. What is the best? Let's just quit. So 2023, mid-year, I was without a job. I was like, this is something that I'm not doing. We'll figure out what we have to do. But this is not happening because I just needed some space to breathe and be myself. Then I went down a little bit of a spirituality route as well, which was a game changer for me, because till the time you don't have that confidence in you, at least have that confidence in this external power that things are going to fall in place. You just need to keep doing it. And I believe that confidence is a subset of action. Once, and literally what Alex Hormozi says, that when you have proof of the actions that you've put in, good or bad, you will automatically start getting more confident. So then I started working on different things. So eventually, from being a marketer within the luxury automotive world to now being a content creator small time, but also running my own digital marketing agency where I'm helping brands, smaller brands with content. It's just changed my life. I've not been happier. I get this privilege, Yasir, to have conversations with people who I would have never had a conversation with otherwise. And I get to explore my curiosity. So right now, of course, it is about helping my younger version, but it is also about chasing my curiosity. Yesterday, I had a conversation with, I don't know if you've heard of this one podcaster called Rich Roll or not. He's somebody who inspired me. Right,
older fellow wears glasses. Is that it?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
yeah.
Ultra marathon runner,
Yeah.
then he turned his life around at 40, and then he runs this very successful podcast. And there was this guy who was on his podcast who was a drug addict and has been sober for 9 years, but for 15 years of his life he was smoking weed every single day. He was into heroin, he was into coke, you name it, and he was doing it. There's so many things that he told me which I have to Google to find out what these drugs are, right? But just having that conversation with him, Yasir, to be able to understand that what addiction is, how does it keep you at one place, where the connection for me was, I was in a job which I didn't like for 4 years. 4 fucking years. Do you know how that long that time is, what it did to me?
I quit at 1, so I don't know what 4 is like.
Exactly. So, and there are different people. There are people like you who have that clarity. And that's why I said, what I absolutely loved about this conversation, I hope this shines through, is to an extent, the dream is to be this person who knows what they want to do.
Yeah.
Exactly. And are so amazing at it. And that's my dream. That dream is this podcast.
And by the way, thank you for sharing that story. There's so many nuggets that I got from that story that I had to write down. My girlfriend is someone who struggles with what you just said. So we're very privileged where we know what we want to do, at least to some extent. My insecurity ended up being my biggest strength. For you, knowing the job wasn't for you, going out on your own is very difficult. many people don't quite know what to do if they didn't do a job. They don't know, they don't like their job, but they don't know what else they would rather do. They have hobbies, but they don't know how to make money out of that, right? So one of the hardest decisions that I've had to make, and I'm sure for you as well, is just quitting without a plan. Just having no idea. When I quit my job, I had $2,500 in my bank. That was hardly any runway. But there came a point, and maybe you can speak to this. I was staring at the screen at work with 10 things I know I needed to do. I just didn't want to do them. And I felt guilty because I was getting paid for it. And I said, I really thank my manager at the time, because he got on a call with me and said, Yasir, you've been a high performer here. You obviously have this thing going on the side. I can tell you're way more passionate about it. What's going on? And I said, I would rather be broke and do that instead than do this for another day. He said, that makes sense. If you have what it takes, I can feel it in you. Whatever you want to do, I'll leave you to it. And that's when I got the confidence to quit my job. If he hadn't asked me to do that, I probably would never have done it. But let me you mentioned spirituality. And this is a discussion I don't think I've ever had with anyone. So I think this is a good part to start it. I'm a very logical person, and I don't really consider myself a spiritual person up until a few years ago, where there's another public speaking coach, Maria Malik, her name is. She's huge on LinkedIn, by the way. She would also be a great guest for you. Her and I, we've been close in terms of our business and starting off our business for years now. But she's big into manifestation. And I could not give less of a crap about manifestation. Like, I do not care. She's like, no, Yasir, I manifested this. I'm like, cry me a river, I don't care. She's like, okay, just try this manifestation experiment. It might work. I said, okay, what is it? She said, think about something that you haven't seen in a very long time and just try to manifest it. It'll appear in your life in a way you didn't expect it to. So I'm trying to prove her wrong. So I said, okay, what have I not seen in a very long time? I haven't seen a turtle in a very long time. Let's go with a turtle. Where the hell am I going to see a turtle? She said, okay, give yourself about 48 hours to see a turtle somehow, somewhere in your life. I said, great, no problem. So I got off the call with her, and I'm just going about life, making sure I don't see a turtle. No turtle here. It's 2 o'clock. Still no turtle. 5 o'clock. No turtle. End of the day, no turtle. And I couldn't be more happy. And then I tell Maria at the end of the day, hey, Maria, just so you know, 24 hours passed. No turtle. This thing is a scam. I don't know why you believe in this. And she's like, Yasir, you were trying to not manifest it. Because you're trying for it to not work, that's why you're not seeing it. I'm like, oh my God, what a cop-out this is. But okay, I get it. Then she says, try to manifest something you actually want. What do you want? Well, I want a sale. At the time, I wanted a client to work with me, but I hadn't gotten business in a while. She said, okay, great. Manifest that. You haven't gotten a sale in a while. Manifest a sale. Wonderful. The next day, I get a call booked. And in the form, everything that they're saying, it doesn't line up with the budget. Their role doesn't line up. Their time zone doesn't line up. Okay, let me just talk to this guy because I have no one else to talk to. I get on the phone with them. I'm like, hey, how can I help you? Hey, Yasir, I need help with this. And I tell them, okay, this is how I help. Oh, but I don't think that's going to work. Have you done this before? Oh, it's not going to work for me. And they're just objection after objection after objection. And at a certain point, listen, why are we going to call? I don't get it. You obviously don't want to pay for this. You don't think it's going to work. You don't trust me. Why are we here? What's the problem? And he just goes quiet for a second. He says, Yasir, if I'm being honest with you, whenever I see a big challenge in the horizon, I just crawl up into my shell like a turtle. Like, what did you just say? Like, yeah, I just crawl up into my shell like a turtle. Like, is this it? Did he just say that word? And then sure enough, he became a client. I got the sale, one of the best clients I've ever worked with. And then I went back to Maria and I said, holy shit, what the hell just happened? I told her this, and she's like, well, there you go. It worked. I'm like, okay, let me try it with my friend. So immediately I called up my friend and I said, you try it. I don't know if I still believe it. He said, okay, I'm going to pick a giraffe. It's like, okay. So the next day he messaged me. He's like, WTF. I'm like, what happened? He sends me a screenshot of him FaceTiming with his niece. In the background, there's a cartoon playing with a giraffe in it. And he's like, I don't know what this is, bro. This is crazy. So ever since then, I've gotten really fascinated with the idea of manifestation. You mentioned, what was his name? Rich something?
Rich Stroll.
Rich Stroll. So your story about that reminded me of Rob Dyrdek. I don't know if you've heard of him before, but he was a very famous skateboarder. And he was also into drugs and smoked weed all the time. And he hired a hypnotist to hypnotize him to become successful. So I have a meeting with his hypnotist today at 6 o'clock
Wow.
to try that avenue too, just because I'm learning to be more open minded with these kinds of ventures.
It's really uncanny and WTF moment that you spoke about manifestation. And I could pick up a sense here or there during our conversation. And the entire thing that you've spoken about, that if you aren't that person, feel like that person. That's really
Yeah.
what manifestation is, one of the rules, right? And it's just about having that perspective
Mm-hmm.
and attracting the right set of opportunities. If I say I'm somebody and act differently, I'll never
Mm-hmm.
get that.
Yeah.
If I
And
act in a certain way, that's really what it starts from, right?
Chirag, we do this very often in very subtle ways. For example, my whole life I said I'm an introvert, and I just kept reaffirming that. I have certain definitions of an introvert. An introvert is all of these behaviors combined together under a label. So when you say I'm an introvert, I'm not a good public speaker, I'm not a communicator, I don't know how to talk native, it comes with all these mini subconscious beliefs behind it. And the more times we reiterate it, we start believing these stories. So the first step is always, is this really true? Is this actually how it is? An exercise that I learned, they help me distinguish between the thoughts in my head and reality. So, for example, if I'm getting the thought, oh, you can't do the speech, you're going to flop this speech, it's not going to go well, I used to think, why am I feeling this way? This is not the right way I should feel it. Someone recommended me, it might have been a therapist I hired at the time. He said, give this person a name, and you want them to be a character in your head that you recognize it's their sole job to sabotage your life. That's all they're there to do. And every time you hear this thought, you just want it to be predictable and you want to say, oh, Bob's trying to do that thing. I named my character Bob. Sorry if you're a Bob listening to the podcast. I'm sure you're a nice person. But I would just say, oh, Bob's trying to say I'm not ready for this presentation. Bob's trying to say I'm going to flop the presentation. And I would just segment between what's real and what my saboteur is saying. There's a great book on this subject called Positive Intelligence by Shirzad. It goes into a lot more detail about this. So when I started doing that, I realized there were patterns where every day I would have 5 to 10 insecure beliefs. And when I learned to label them under Bob trying to sabotage me, it was almost like if someone comes to you in high school and says, Chirag, you're really ugly. Maybe the first day, oh my God, he's saying I'm ugly. But if he did that every single day for 60 days, eventually by day 20, day 30, yeah, at 12 o'clock, he's going to come and say this to me. It's this class, he's going to say this to me. I knew the pattern in my mind because it was very predictable. If you can learn to write down all the most predictable thoughts and label them as not thoughts that are reality, but dialogue that your inner saboteur is trying to give it to you, over a month or two, and I've tried this with clients too, it makes a huge difference to your confidence because then you can see reality for what it is and you disband a lot of these labels that you attach to yourself.
Interesting. And since now you're going deeper into this concept of
Mm-hmm.
manifestation and understanding how energy also works, because it's
Mm-hmm.
about energy, right? Does
Mm-hmm.
this help you become a better coach as well?
I haven't thought about those two things together. I saw an interview by Abramovich who he said, even if I know I'm getting in the boxing ring with Tyson Fury, I know I'm still going to walk out winning. I know logically that's not the case, but I have to have that mindset, right? And
Yeah.
I always discount my experience. So if you said, Yasir, you're the best public speaking coach in the world for CEOs, immediately my brain's like, well, you don't know every single person in the world. You don't know every single coach in the world. How do you know that? It starts logically destroying that belief. So now I just say, yes, I am the best public speaking coach in the world for CEOs. And I just say it enough times till I believe it. And then when I show up to my clients, I don't question my techniques. I don't question my experience. I just know they're getting the best. That's how it's helped me. But I haven't had to make that link before. So that's an interesting thought you've given me just now.
Because I definitely feel that somewhere down the line, of course, if it is making you better in
Yeah.
this entire process as a person, as a professional, then that would automatically roll into and percolate into the way you're coaching people,
Yeah.
right?
To backtrack a little bit, I can see how it's helped me with my business. I
Hmm.
spoke to you about Shannon, the founder of Lumi Deodorant. Before I worked with her, I was full on clients. I did not want to take on any of the clients. So I have another coach on my team, Jeff Torrance, who, funny enough, he's the first person who taught me public speaking all those years ago. And then I hired him on my team. So that's a story in itself. But he spoke with her And immediately afterward, he said, Yasir, you have to speak to Shannon. I said, why? I'm full. I don't want to work with any more clients. I said, no, you need to speak with her. So I said, okay, fine, I will. I got on a call with Shannon, and she said, hey, Yasir, I've seen your videos. I want to work with you, blah, 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 blah. I'm looking for the best. I said, okay, great. I didn't want to work with her, so I said, hey, just so you know, I charge $5,000 a month. Now, in my mind, that was usually at that time, it was like $3,000 I would charge. So I said $5,000 so that she wouldn't work with me. And the two words she said after that, Chirag, sit in my head rent-free to this day. I said $5,000, and she said, that's it? Like, what do you mean? That's all you charge? $5,000? Like, yeah. How much were you expecting? And then she's like, do you do this full time? Is this a side gig? Like, what's going on? A lot of my clients, I have to convince them to pay $5,000. It's like, Yasir, I came in here with a $25,000 minimum budget, and you're telling me $5,000, and now I'm not so sure if you can actually help me. And my brain is in complete chaos. I don't know what the hell is happening. I've never had this kind of conversation before. So now I'm having to convince her to work with me because I'm too cheap. So eventually she says, okay, I'll work with you. We had our first session. After the first session, Chirag, she spent 2 hours on the call with me convincing me to raise my prices. She said, the clients that you work with are people like me, and if you say $5,000 to them, you're not the best. Your prices need to reflect world-class coaching. So the next person you get on a call with, I want you to say $20,000. And I said, what the heck am I going to offer? No, exact same thing you gave me, $20,000. Just say it. The next call I had, Chirag, was with a 19-year-old from Saudi Arabia. I usually don't even get on calls with people who are 19 years old because there's no chance of them affording my rates. I got on a call. I said, listen, before we have this call, I don't want to waste your time. Just so you know, I charge $20,000. That's how much I charge. Yeah, no problem. My government's paying for it. Anyway, so I need help with XYZ.
That's it?
Like, are you kidding me right now? I could have done that this whole time. And obviously, I worked with him, and it was great. And then since then, my prices have never gone down. But the reason I tell you this story is because in that moment, Shannon believed in me more than I believed in myself. She gave me the conviction that I didn't have because she knew how to manifest. She knew how to believe. She knew that you have to have a bigger vision for yourself than you have a collection of evidence in the past should be smaller than your vision for the future. So that way, it's helped me with my business.
Wow. We always have this instance or this one person who somehow externally, and they come out of the blue in your life, right? They're not your friends, they're not your family, and they've hardly ever met you, but they see you for who you are in terms of the person you want to be and the service that you want to provide. And they spot that value and the X factor in you. And you're like, listen, I don't have this much confidence in myself, the amount you have in me, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's so amazing.
Some people are lucky where their parents do that for them at a very early age.
Right.
Whereas some of us have to learn that over time. Something that I have learned is that in life, you might not get what you want, but if you look closer, you might have gotten exactly what you needed. You might not have gotten what you want, but if you look closer, you might have gotten exactly what you needed because we think we want one thing. But it sets us on a completely different course. When I quit my job as a receptionist, I wanted to be a career advisor at a university because I had a degree in education. I was talking about resumes anyway. So I applied to UBC and all these different companies, different organizations and universities, and I kept getting rejected for it. And it was this big hole in my heart where my dream was being broken. But Chirag, looking back, I'm so glad I got rejected because none of this would have happened otherwise. None of this would have happened. In the short term, it looks like a loss. And I tell my girlfriend this all the time. But if you look at anything over a longer term horizon, there's always something better for you. She works at TikTok, funny enough. And before she worked at TikTok, we just saw the job posting pop up. And she said, yeah, this is interesting. I don't have enough experience. I said, no, this is what we're going to do. We're going to write down every name of every hiring manager. You're going to make an individual TikTok video for every single one of them with their name. You're going to add captions, all of that. You're going to find their email and you're going to send it to them. I said this on a Friday. On a Monday, she sent it. On the Tuesday, she got the first recruiter interview. And the following Monday, she got the job. And all because I had now learned to believe in someone else because someone had once believed in me. And now we had the same thing happen with her where she was at TikTok, loved her job. And then Amazon came in and it's like, I don't know, I'm pretty happy at TikTok. I said, no, here's what you're going to do. We're going to apply, blah, blah. And just this week, she got the job at Amazon too. So
Congratulations.
if I hadn't gotten that skill set from the people who taught me to believe in myself, I would not be able to do it, give it forward. And I'm sure the same thing applies for you.
100%. And what you said, and this has so much of value, because what happens is that for people who are listening, who are struggling to find that job, this is how you stand out.
Yeah.
At any given point in time, you go to LinkedIn, whatever position, give it a day, that job has 500 job applications.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it is through Easy Apply, nobody's looking at your resume. And you know what? I've also had conversations with so many career coaches, etc., and everybody has told me how to optimize the resume, which I hope people are doing and stuff.
Yeah.
But become memorable, stand out. How do you do that? TikTok video. How many people who would have applied for that position would have made that TikTok video? Instantly, you're one person who stands out. Okay, this is Sam in a way, whether right experience or not, but the right attitude. That's the key. That's really how you stand out. And you would eventually probably not do it for every job. This is how we also get career clarity. That one role where you know that this is for you and you make that effort to make that video is the role that is probably calling out to you and saying that, hey, I'm the right fit.
It also demonstrates being proactive and being an action taker before you even get the interview. If you've showed me already you do this, what are you going to be like once you're in the job? And to be fair, my girlfriend she is not only the hardest worker I know. Every company she leaves, they're like, oh my God, how are we going to continue without her? It's like they're upset because of her. And I say, I wish I had this quality that you. So she's a top performer in every respect. She inspires me every single day. And then I've learned many lessons around work ethic from her too. Because she'll say, you were busy the whole day, but what did you do? I'm like, oh crap, do we have to do this every single day? And she's like, yeah, well, what was the needle mover in what you did today? I'm like, okay, fine, I'll do something better tomorrow. I can't do things impulsively. You reminded me of something, and I heard this from Shannon too. When she was creating her deodorant brand, she said whenever she creates a brand, she has this knack now for creating $1 million brands because she's done it enough times. She says, whenever I'm doing something, launching a brand, I try to think of 2 words, and those 2 words are better and different. And different is more important than better. And that was very surprising to me. The reason I feel like it might be valuable to you is because when your audience, they're applying for a job, them and 50,000 other people just graduated with a marketing degree. And when you're talking to career coaches, everyone's talking about resume, how to do the ADS, how to networking. I personally am sick and tired of hearing that. I'm sure there are people who need to hear that in their journey, but it's the same. It's the same content. So sure, I have a slightly better strategy or I have a better acronym, but what makes you different? And I feel like that's the question that most people can't answer. When I was doing my public speaking coaching business, I struggled with this because people would say, okay, your rate is this much. Why don't I just hire this other guy who does the same thing but cheaper? What do you have that's different? So my difference had to be that I only work with high status, celebrity level people, high net worth individuals. You're paying me a shit ton of money to know it's going to get done right. That's my thing. If you want to save money, you want to hire anybody else, go do that. There's no one in the world who does what I do. And that makes me different. Whereas I have a lot of people who, I don't blame them. They try to copy my content, copy my funnel. And I've done this too. But the way they will approach it is, here's one tip to improve your public speaking. Here's how to start a presentation. Here's how to overcome your nerves. What do you think the 20,000 other public speaking coaches are talking about? The exact same thing. So you just completely blend in. So if there's one thing I can tell people from a marketing perspective, from a job perspective, is don't just try to be better than everyone else, also try to be different. And sometimes that can be your approach, that can be your personality, that can be your stories.
But is business coaching something that you're exploring as well? Because obviously it's a natural progression. Yasir, you hang out with the sharpest minds out there. right? You've successfully set up your business despite your girlfriend saying whatever of your daily routine, but the numbers are there, and of
She,
course,
yeah, she's very supportive. I just want to put that out there.
of
She just
course,
tries to
of course.
optimize my work. Yeah.
But in general, what I want to understand is that something which is in the horizon? Is that something that you're thinking where people
I've
can benefit from your?
I've done it before, and I've had. If you just look at my inbox on Instagram right now, there's tons of people who are like, "Hey, can you consult me on this or that?" I used to run a business coaching program 3 years ago or something where I taught people to do this, but I really didn't enjoy helping people learn what they need to do in life. Like that, it's not
Hmm.
something I liked, and I realized that many of the people that I coach. Trying to be specific with my words here, they don't have the kind of drive I do. I'm sure there are many people who do, but if I get an idea, I just do it right away. Whereas many of the people that I was coaching, they need affirmations, they need to make sure it's the right idea, everything in the universe needs to align. And I don't like working with people like that. So I wasn't as invested in it. I'm working right now with the person I learned public speaking coaching from, Craig Ballantyne. He's the 1999 world champion of public speaking. My favorite public speaker of all time. I'm going to meet him in about 45 minutes from now. He came to me and he said, Yasir, I've been doing this 30 years longer than you have. Why are you more famous than I am? I go, what am I missing? So I said, here's what we'll do. I want you to coach me, and I want to make sure there's no blind spots in my coaching and my speaking ability. And in return, I will help you develop that brand. He said, sure. So if you go to TikTok and you write, might be speaking with Craig Ballantyne or Craig Ballantyne speaks one of them. We launched his account in May, and he's already at 120,000 followers. So I know how to do
Insane.
this really well, and he's gotten tons of business from it. People reaching out, like, "Oh my god, why was I not doing this before?" And by the way, it helps that he's a top performer. He's the best in the world. What he does, he's got 30 terabytes of footage from his 30 years of public speaking coaching. So I can make successful people more successful. It's hard for me to make someone who has no track record successful. I think that's the part that I did not enjoy. But to answer your question about whether it's on the horizon, I get distracted very quickly. Like, oh, I've done this now. Let me do that. Let me do that. If I just do what I'm doing now for the next 10 years, Chirag, I'll be the best, renowned across the world at what I do. I don't want to be known as the Instagram expert. I don't want to be known as the guy who helps you get leads. There's enough people like that. And I don't think from a mission perspective is what I want to do when I'm on my deathbed looking back. What did you do? Oh, I help people get more leads. Sure, it's great, changes your life and everything, but that's not my purpose. I want people to start believing in their true potential. And I want them to say, hey, because of what Yasir said, the things he shared, it made me accomplish what I didn't think was possible. That's my true mission. So because of that, most likely won't be seeing a how to make money online course from me anytime soon.
Probably see a version of a luxury version of that, which is like working purely with the creme de la creme, which is people who you identify as peak performers. Maybe it's just that niche, right? Because
Yeah.
I never say never. With
Yeah.
so much of information that is there and experience that you have, I think so many of us can get value from that.
Yeah, I'm more than happy to. I even did an entire 1.5 hour training on how I got from 0 to 1 million followers, and
Mhm.
I put that up on YouTube. But I made a critical mistake in there, where I will make videos analyzing certain people, like celebrities and stuff, and without saying names, some of those people see the videos and then they reach out to me. Hey, you made this video about my speech from XYZ. You're bang on. I had this speech coming up, whatever. And what I didn't realize is some of the other people watch that and then they start doing the same exact thing. And then those people would say, "Hey, I don't want everyone to start making videos about me now. Like it was a one-off. I get it." So then I say, "Okay, let me just take that video down. I don't want everyone to see what my strategy was there." It got a little strange. I didn't anticipate that happening.
It's strange, right? Again, being in different phases of
Yeah.
your journey at one point in time, probably it's also nice to have this validation, if of sorts,
Oh,
that hey, if
I
I'm
love
doing something
validation to this
well,
day. By the
people
way,
are following what I'm doing and copying what I'm doing.
make no
That's
mistake. I am a lover of validation. My inner child who did not get enough attention is just loving this. But I've had to remind myself that this is not about me. This is not about making myself feel good. This is about a broader message. There's a very selfish gene in my brain that I consciously try to remove, and it's a work in progress. I'm not quite there yet.
But at some point in time, I mean, how does it feel having 3 million people follow you, man? 3 million. 3 million.
I don't really think about it a lot, to be honest with you. It's not, you know what I really do like? I will get messages from people in my inbox. I had this message from a PhD candidate at Johns Hopkins. And he said, "Hey, I was extremely anxious about my public speaking. I saw your videos. I implemented it. I defended my thesis successfully. And they said it was the best one that they've ever seen." And those are the messages that make me feel good. I've had students in Kenya who aced their president, like those really small wins. Sure, that it's easy to make successful people more successful, but it's hard to truly change someone's life from the ground level. So when I see some of those stories, I'll share one with you. This is nothing that I did, but I hosted a workshop here in Toronto, and I do free workshops. I don't need people's money. Just I can record it and share it online. A woman came into my workshop, and she worked as a midwife. If you're not familiar with what a midwife is someone who helps with delivering the baby, with pregnancy, and all the stuff that happens afterward. So she came in, and you could tell she wasn't from here. She had some beliefs about her language that she might not be the most qualified person when she speaks. So she says, "I want to work on my accent. I want to work on my public speaking. I want to be a good public speaker." I said, "Sure, let me help you." So I brought her up on stage, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a simple question. Most people here might not know what a midwife is. Just tell us what a midwife is." And she spoke for maybe 30 seconds. And she said, "Oh, I'm not sure. I'm not feeling very confident right now. I don't know if I want to talk even more." So I said, "Okay, let me ask you something that maybe you know more about, and you don't have to come up with an answer. Being a midwife, can you tell me about one of the most memorable stories you can think of, or something extraordinary that's happened to you at work?" And she started talking about this story where there was a mother who delivered a child, and upon birth, the child was not breathing. So the doctors obviously panicked. They started doing CPR and everything in their power to bring the baby back to life, but the baby, it just would not respond. So eventually the doctor looked at her and said, "Hey, we have to call it. We have to write time of death and do what's needed to be done." So obviously the mother was just screaming hysterically, and she was distraught by it. Just that whole experience can be so traumatizing. So she knew she had to go and do the procedure after the child passes. But instead of doing that, she went and continued giving the baby CPR and did it for an extra 10 minutes until the baby started breathing. And she continued to do it and continued to do it. Of course, you can imagine the mother's reaction when she did that. She was just overjoyed. And this happened on a Friday. And Monday, when the doctors came back into the room to check up on her, they saw the baby breastfeeding, and they were just completely in awe. What's going on? And she said, her right there, she saved my baby's life. If she hadn't stuck around the extra 10 minutes, my baby would not be alive. And when she was telling us that story, she said, this experience is so important to me because I learned that if you go the extra mile in your job, it can be the difference between life and death. So you might not think you staying for an extra hour or going the extra mile is important, but for other people, it might be the difference between life and death. She said that story, Chirag, and the entire room was just quiet for 10 minutes. I heard that and I said, you have everything it takes to be a good public speaker, because I'm on the verge of tears just listening to this. I just don't think you believe in yourself enough. I just don't think you think you're a good public speaker. And the entire time I was saying that to her, she was just saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure I'm a good? What about my gestures? What about my filler words?" I said, "Forget about all that. Who cares? I'm telling you this story right now in this podcast. That's a testament to the fact that I remember it and it was memorable to me." And when she went back home the next day, then she said, "Yasir, this entire time I didn't know. I just needed someone else to tell me I'm good." And those are the stories, Chirag. That's why I do what I do. I want more people like that around the world who have the skill, who have the stories, who just need a little bit of push to share with the world.
Absolutely. And here is where I feel that our missions are similar. That the entire reason why the podcast is called Extraordinary is about tapping into that essence within, which is that little extra, right? And that's what makes you extraordinary. Talking about noise, so this is all the positivity, but listen, 3 million followers will also bring in a lot of people who aren't happy with what you do, or definitely would
Oh,
have an opinion, and there are always
yeah,
naysayers. And
yeah.
while we are in a world where we haven't been more sensitive, I think with regards to being insensitive, we are right up there as well,
Hmm.
because not knowing somebody, not knowing their mission, passion, reasons for doing what they do, we just like to rip them apart because nobody can see us writing what we do. How does that work in your line of work? Because obviously there is a marked social media presence and not
Yeah,
everybody is a fan.
yeah, certainly not. So I'll tell you, when I started on TikTok, I was so happy that I was getting engagement. I was, oh my God, people are commenting on my stuff. But if you go and watch some of my older videos, I hadn't gotten my Invisalign treatment done, and my teeth were still very messed up, as I said. Chirag, every single comment was about my teeth. Every single comment. And it was just like I was sharing something from the bottom of my heart, and all of the comments were like, look at his messed up teeth. This guy looks like a crocodile, like all of those things. And I would wake up,
Jeez.
one side of me would want to see how the video is doing, and the other side of me would absolutely dread looking at the comments because I knew what they would say. I remember a video I posted where I was wearing a black shirt and I was specifically far away from the camera so my teeth don't show up as much because I got insecure about it. Someone commented about the one piece of dandruff that they could see on that black shirt. And then it had a ton of likes on it, and then all of the rest of the comments were just about that. So I learned that lesson early on. I hate that this is the case, but for me, in my mental psyche, checking the comments is not helpful. I hate that I don't get to see a lot of the comments people are posting. But Chirag, I in the past 2 3 years, I think I've checked the comments maybe 10 times on my videos to this day, and that's what keeps me sane. So it's easier for me to just not know it's happening than to argue and justify. And is that how people actually feel? Now, I will say this is a perspective you might not hear often. I always had messed up teeth, but it wasn't until I saw that many negative comments that I did something about it. So
Mm.
you can argue that because those comments got to me, there was some truth to what they were saying that made me feel insecure enough where I said, okay, why am I upset at this? I'm upset at this because they're right. I'm upset at this because I know my teeth are really messed up. I need to fix this. And then when I got the teeth fixed, now people said, hey, your nose is a little messed up. Your hair is this. So at a certain point, you realize, okay, I can pick and choose. An analogy that I like to give people is if I came to you and I said, Chirag, your shirt is yellow. Why are you wearing a yellow shirt? You would say, are you stupid? My shirt is black. I said, no, your shirt is yellow. You would not feel insecure about that because you just know the color of your shirt like it's a fact. And you would think I'm stupid.
Right.
But when people say, Chirag, you're ugly or your content sucks, now we get defensive about it. Like, oh, it
Hmm.
does, right? But if you know it for a fact, you don't need to argue with it. You just dismiss the other person entirely. So now I have things that I have done with my life where I've coached enough people where someone say, oh, this guy's a fraud. He doesn't know what he's talking about. This technique doesn't work. I know they don't have enough experience to make that conclusion, and I don't need to take their experience seriously. So I don't read the comments, and I'm sure enough about what I do and what I talk about that it doesn't bother me anymore.
I think what really stands out for me, Yasir, is that both the attraction and the glow and the shininess of having 3 million followers and everything that comes with it, along
Yeah.
with the negativity, you're not letting either the good or the bad get too much into your head. So you're definitely keeping vanity metrics at bay.
At the end of the day, I ask myself, is that going to help me do more of what I'm doing?
Hmm.
The answer to that is no. If I check more comments, I am more likely to get discouraged. Not that I think I will, but it's not going to help me. So what is the benefit? I know the people whose perspective I really want are the people on my email list because they've already raised their hand and said, "Hey, this is something that I really like. I like Yas's content." The people who watch my YouTube stuff, they tend to be more inclined. I also run a private membership I have is more affordable. So those people are people whose for words I really value because they've passed a certain filter. I know them. I know enough about their life. If it's just anyone anywhere in the world, I don't need to take everyone's opinion into consideration. And also, I think this is a first for humanity, We have access to everyone's thoughts all the time, all day, every day. We don't need this much input. I don't
No.
need to hear from 300 people what they think of my video. It's just
Absolutely.
my brain is not designed for that kind of input. So again, if it helps me do more of what I'm already doing, I will do it. If not, then I will not. And unfortunately, checking comments does not help.
This is amazing, man. I mean, you know what? I'm manifesting having a studio and doing more in-person podcasts, and hopefully
Yeah.
that would happen soon. And I can only imagine. This has been absolutely phenomenal. I have thoroughly enjoyed each and every second of our conversation, and I wish you all the best for everything that you're doing. Your mission is incredible. And this conversation has been extremely valuable, and I'm sure for me definitely, and I'm sure that the listeners will find as much value from this.
I appreciate you having me here, and this has been one of the more enjoyable podcasts that I've had. Usually it's question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. You're a very good communicator yourself, the way you ask questions, the way you recap, and the enthusiasm you have around it. So if it weren't for your interviewing skills, I would not have enjoyed this as much. So I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.